Hi folks, this is Jay. I hope you're okay today. We're looking at Mike Licona and historical evidence for the resurrection of Jesus. Licona is an important scholar who has written this book, and it takes secular methodology for understanding history, and then applies it to whether Jesus rose from the dead. So what we're going to do now is we're going to listen to Licona speak for a few minutes, and then read some notes of the lecture that I made, and then have a think, and we'll do a few videos on this.
I'm 48 years old, and when I was going through school, I went to Liberty University for my undergraduate and graduate work, and during my graduate time I was specializing in the study of New Testament Greek, and I was really enjoying it. I wanted to read the New Testament in its original language, and so I was just studying, spending endless hours doing that and just loving it. But then one day I asked myself the question, is this stuff true? How will I know if it's true? And after all, I've been raised in a Christian family, became a Christian at the age of 10. I never really questioned my faith and asked, how do I know that this stuff is true? I had told Muslims that what they believe is false. I had told Buddhists that what they believe is false. And to be honest with you, at that point, I didn't even have a clue in what they really believed. All I knew was what I believed was right. And I hadn't even engaged in any objections against the faith at that point, because I didn't know that. Found out about 3-4 weeks ago that my dissertation is going to be published, so that should be coming out in November. We're working. Suppose I believe that this is true, but maybe I was deceived. Well, glad you asked that. I'll give you one sign, my resurrection from the dead. John chapter 2, verses 18 through 22. Jesus overturned the tables in the temple, and they said, show us a sign that you have this kind of authority. And Jesus said, destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it. They thought, of course, he was talking about the temple. And then John says, after he rose from the dead, his disciples realized that he was talking about the temple of his body. Elsewhere, he talks about the sign of Jonah. There's numerous occasions in which he predicts his death and his subsequent resurrection.
Okay, we'll stop there. Basically, we're just going to look at Licona's method, what his method is, okay, in the book. And you can get it from the lecture, a couple of lectures that you've seen there. Basically, his starting point, his main defense, is normally traditional apologists would go to the Gospels and defend the resurrection from there. Taking the cue from Habermas's friend, Licona goes to 1 Corinthians 15, where from chapter 15 verse 1 to about 7 it talks about eyewitness accounts. He does that because critics will grant that 1 Corinthians is early historical source material. The certain words that oral tradition used in that time of rabbis of passing on oral tradition, for example the word of first importance, is directly historically verified with the Jews and rabbis of that time who used that kind of language for passing on oral tradition, and what that means is 1 Corinthians is early source material. What Licona wants to do is hit historical bedrock. That is to say, look at information that all historians from all camps, whether conservative or liberal, would agree on. So he will take basic historical bedrock material that most historians would say is historically true, and he would use that as a basis to argue for the resurrection of Christ. What he would do is he would test the hypotheses of his methodology, his method of and belief in the resurrection, in historical studies, as opposed to the methodology of a critic. So, for example, using secular methods of historiography, having a conjecture or more of a ad hoc evidence within your framework or hypotheses means that your hypothesis is less likely to be actually true. So, for example, skeptics will say, well, the body was stolen, but this is conjecture, not on any solid evidence. So, because such a view would have ad hoc information in it, if the opponent can present facts that are actually rooted in what the historians are saying and in the evidence, so i.e. It can be asserted that Jesus was buried in the tomb of Joseph of Arimathea and the tomb became empty. That being based on evidence, solid evidence, if we're saying Jesus rose from the dead based on solid evidence like that, it is better than a position that has got ad hoc and less certain facts to the case. That is basically what Licona is trying to achieve in his apologetic.